Like a deer in the headlights. She wanted the spotlight and she wasn't ready for it.
I didn't know if we picked one that we were actually starting with.
I thought we set them to all comments and we'll go in order from the top. Then we all agree.
Okay. Well, I feel like Alessandra usually picks one in the beginning that's like
I do. I try to pick a hot
juicy
topic.
one that's gonna hook people in.
Well, we missed that boat.
Well, we could just hit stop and re-record.
No. This is authentic.
We're in it. We're here. Full send.
We're in the nitty gritty.
How to navigate your relationship with your in-laws and parents when it comes to parenting your kids. For example, my mother-in-law doesn't understand why I stick to wake windows and a sleep schedule for our 19-month-old, and he always comes home from their house overtired and cranky. We'll dive into this and so much more on today's Q&A episode.
I'm going to be honest, I can't find it. I thought we synchronized, and that one, I know it was there.
We're off
But
to
now
a
it's
great
gone.
start, guys.
It's one of the first few.
Found it. How do you say your name? Is it Ketsia?
I think we say this every episode, so she hasn't corrected us yet. We're just going to go for it. Kezia.
The rest of her question, by the way, was I've tried to gently remind her of my wishes, and we got her to start using the Huckleberry app that we use, but she loves to make their own schedule and keep him out and up way later than is healthy.
I feel like this is a common struggle if you have boomer parents.
Yeah.
What's the age of boomers? I know Tom made a joke, but I don't think Tom's a boomer.
No, it's
No.
definitely like our parent. Like it's definitely
Yeah.
probably like 60 and up.
Like the baby boomers, it was like, I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah,
No,
50.
it's probably
I don't know what.
50s, 40s.
We'd have to look
late
up what the
40s.
actual birth year is.
Yeah.
But I do feel like
anyway.
it's our parents' generation.
Yeah. And
roughly.
I think it's
And
great.
above.
I think it's great that you have tried to have these conversations with her and kind of like explain like, hey, this is why we do these things. This is why we have this schedule set up. Like I know we've had to have that conversation a lot of times, especially with Kai. Like I wouldn't say like now our parents understand, I feel like, but with our first kid, like we had to definitely just kind of explain a little bit more in depth why we do things. But I think it ultimately comes down to like they did things so much differently than how we do them now, and like what was safe back then as far as even like safe sleep and like what to put in the crib and like the car seat laws and regulations. Like everything is completely different, so they're almost having to like relearn how to raise a baby and raising their grandkids. So I understand for sure. With that said, I'm sure it's probably frustrating for you because she's had this conversation and tried to have this conversation gently of what their wishes are. So if that was me in that case, I mean, it sounds like this person is a caregiver, right?
I think she said it's her
didn't really
mother-in-law.
say. Yeah.
Yeah, she's her mother-in-law. I know that was my follow-up question too. Like, is this someone that you rely on for like child care so you can work versus is this just like, oh, she wanted to have, my child for a few hours on the weekend? Because I think the response to those may be different. Like, how much do you need to rely on this person? You may have to be a little bit more lenient. If it wasn't a need, I'm kind of on like the other end where if you are not doing as I wish, you simply will not have the same opportunity to spend the time with my kid, mostly if it's a safety and health concern. Like I don't love, certain things about, what my kid is maybe fed, if they go to their in-laws or, parent-in-laws, whatever. But I also know that like a cookie when they're at grandma and grandpa's house, like isn't going to kill them. Or if they got to have some extra ice cream and had a second bowl of ice cream, like it's not going to kill them. That I feel like is a whole lot different than, prime example, my dad was picking up the babies the other day so they could have their sleepover at Mima and Papa's house. And my dad's like, I got these new car seats so we could like have the girls in the car. And these car seats are like after 25 pounds, you have to flip them front facing. And I'm a big like car seat safety rear facing until you're 12 years, not really 12, but like now the car seat recommendations are so much different than when our parents were kids. Or when our parents had us, at least. I feel like some people were literally not even in car seats. The car seat recommendations now are mostly by weight, not really by height. So like our personal car seats for our girls are like extended rear facing to like 50 pounds or something. Like it's a chunk. It's like 50 to 60 pounds or something like that. And these were like front facing after 22 pounds, I think. And I was like, I wish you asked me about these car seats before you bought them, because I would have told you that I do not want them front facing. And my dad was like, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. Like, well, it used to be so much different. I didn't know they're still supposed to be rear facing now. And so like went on, looked at other car seats and everything. But like, that's a prime example. A, that was accidental, but B, a lot of the times, Alessandra, to your point, like things are just so much different now than they were. And so like that's a thing for me safety wise, that like, hey, I'm not comfortable with this. I don't really want you taking them if they're going to be front facing in your car, because we're also like not around the block. Like they live 40 minutes away, so if they're out and about with the girls, like you want them to be safe in the car. So I think those gentle reminders are really helpful. I do also think you have to pick and choose your battles. So you have to decide like what is really worth it for you. Like safety car seats, that's 100% worth the conversation to me. Wake windows and sleep, it's worth the conversation depending on your kid and depending on the age. Like some kids are really, really adaptable and really resilient if they miss a nap, or if their nap moves by an hour, or their sleep time moves by an hour. I have one kid who's really resilient and adaptable with that, and I have one kid who is an absolute terror, my 22-month-old, if she misses that nap window or we change that sleep schedule for her. So I just rambled a lot, but I hope I agree. I would say it depends on the situation in which you need your mother-in-law, and depends on like, can you pick and choose your battles? But if it comes to the safety and health of your child, I typically think it's worth having the conversation.
This is something we definitely worked through early on, and like really primarily with Kai to kind of get it ingrained. But our parents are awesome. They've been helping from the get-go, and it has taken some, like, with appreciation. Like that's how the conversation always starts, because we are, I don't want to say totally reliant, but they do show up a few days a week for a chunk of time, and we greatly appreciate that help. It allows us to get some stuff done. So like with that in mind, it's like, hey, you know, we couldn't do this without you. But like, if you're coming back an hour later, like if they go somewhere or whatever, like that actually doesn't help me. Like then he's a terror the rest of the day. He's off. He wakes, like it throws everything off. So if this is going to be the case, you either can't leave the house, you're going to stay here and he just goes to bed, or you're not taking him. Like you can, you know, it stops being helpful. So we're not going to keep doing whatever this is. That took a little while. Like it went from like an hour to like 45 minutes to half an hour. And I'm like, I just kept digging in, and to the point where I don't know if we have a reputation at this point, but we have our kids on a schedule. Like this works for us. We're able to do what we do, working from home with the kids. Kids aren't going to daycare because of the way we have things regimented. So however people want to view that, it is what it is. I don't care how you view it. This is how we are. But just making that very clear and not letting up on it. Like from my perspective, it's like, this is the way that it's going to be, or this is not going to be a thing anymore. And they did come around and they got in line with that, and they've been very receptive. It wasn't that necessarily they were like, oh, I don't care. It was just they were out doing fun things, and you know, you come home 45 minutes later. So just letting them know how important that was to us. It eventually got through, and we're in a much better place now. But I hear you. We were in that spot, and that was something we did decide to make a stand on. Like we need this to work. This is all built on a house of cards at this point, with stacking all these kids and working from home. Like this has to be the thing, and it's worked for us. You're either on board or you're not.
Yeah. And they are tough conversations to have, like depending on, you know, the needs in the situation. It could be tough and uncomfortable. I know it would be easier for me to have those conversations with my parents than my in-laws. So like she also mentioned, it's an in-law. You might feel differently about who you're having that conversation with, or send your spouse in if needed. Like, hey, honey, can you talk to so-and-so about this? But yeah, I think it's a learning experience, and it also sounds like maybe that's her only child or like first child. And I think that makes a difference too. Like I know when I had one kid, I was way more like, I need you to do it this way and my way. And once I had the second baby, I think I was a little bit more lenient with like, okay, like I could see some things that I had a very tight leash on that I don't feel the same way about as a second time parent. So just another consideration point. Okay, next question. Should I continue reading?
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
yours.
Am I the reader now?
You're the reader today.
I've been promoted, guys. Round of applause, please.
Lead chair.
Another question. Actually, this is by the same girl. How did we pronounce her name? Ketsia?
I said Ketsia.
Ketsia. Okay. I like this question. Your top 5 or however many items that you've purchased to help with healthy sleep habits / your nighttime unwinding and sleep routine. These could be apps, appliances, supplements, or drinks.
Vodka.
Earplugs for Alessandra.
I was just going to say my earplugs are my number one, although I'm not wearing them right now in this newborn phase. I would say earplugs, magnesium. I have that every night before bed. I've had that for probably almost a decade now. I recently got like the Hatch knockoff sound machine. So it's like a light that changes colors. You can set whatever color depending on time of day. It has a little clock on it. It's an alarm with different sounds. We use it as a sound machine with Wes in our room right now. I really love it. It's great. And you can set it so like the light wakes you up first. So like the sunrise, which I was using before I had him. And it was just more of a peaceful way to wake up. So that would be 3. My eye mask, just a generic Amazon eye mask to keep it dark in our room. And then I would say I'm gonna have to go with the mouth tape. I'm not wearing it right now because I've been stuffed up, but putting it out there, I shared this with our coaches. It's just like tape that goes over your mouth, and the idea is that you're supposed to be breathing through your nose when you sleep. It's just better for your overall health. But I notice such a difference when I wear that with my deep sleep. So my Oura ring tracks like my deep sleep. And the nights that I wore my mouth tape, I had 20 to 30 minutes more of deep sleep. So that's my little N=1 experiment. But I don't know. I think it makes sense for me. And I think that if you aren't scared that you're going to stop breathing, there's a tiny little hole in it. There's a little hole like where your lips part. So like that made me feel better, but I'm team mouth tape.
I think
Josh?
I would wake up and feel like I would forget that I put it on, and I think I would like randomly wake up and think I was like being kidnapped and my mouth was taped shut, and I could just see myself in a complete panic mode, like waking up in the middle of the night with it on.
Especially for the person who gets like that sleep paralysis and then your mouth is taped shut. Fuck.
Like hear something in the house, you wake up, your mouth is taped shut. Like just I would not do well.
The first night I wore it, I forgot to say goodnight to Josh first. So I'm like, he like turned to say goodnight to me and I couldn't open my mouth. But I don't know. Don't knock it till you try it. What would you guys add?
Pretty similar. Sleep mask 1, chamomile sleepy tea. That's my second. I'll do that like a half an hour before I go down, and then the magnesium right before bed. I don't use this all the time, but I've got one of those. It's like an Amazon Alexa, but it's a sound bowl, and it's got like different variations of the sound bowl. You look like you have no idea what I'm talking about, Joelle. You know what a sound bowl is? Like the
I know what a sound bowl is.
Oh, okay. All right, you looked confused. So it's like I'm not gonna do it.
I thought you were like describing it as an app, so I was confused. Like
no, it's an Amazon Alexa, like It's not Alexa, but it looks like it. And then you can change the different tones of the sound
bath noises.
Yep.
Gotcha.
So I'll do that with meditation once in a while for 10 minutes. So I'll include that. And then I'm going to include the book, like just having a book to read. So between the tea, the magnesium, unwinding with the meditation, and then I'll read until like I'm about to pass out. And then I'll just drop the book and go to sleep. Like when I do those things consistently, like I'm falling asleep within 10 minutes, and usually like I'm a tosser and turner. So that's made a huge difference for me.
Yeah, similar. I don't use a sleep mask. I use something called the Nod Pod. Have you guys ever heard of that?
No.
It's like a weighted, face mask, kind of. That's the best way I
So
can
it is a
describe
face.
it.
It's a face mask.
It's not like how you would think of a face mask. It's like a, do you want to show it to you? I could get it. It's like a long,
I'm Googling
how
it.
does one describe this? Google it so you can see it.
Nod pod.
Yeah, in front of you. It's called the Nod Pod. They have a website, or you could get it on Amazon. This is not sponsored. Jazzy Things sent it to me years ago as like a, hey, like you're doing great, mom, like a postpartum gift. And it helped me with sleep so much because it's like you think about a weighted sleep sack that like
It's like a giant bow tie.
This thing?
Yes. I'm like,
it's not
I
going to
think I
show.
could see it from there. Like, how do I describe this? Because it's not a face mask, but you like lay it across your face. It doesn't fully like go around your head like a face mask, because then you can, like, if you lay on your side, you can move them like they're like
It stays
pods
on
of,
though?
well, yeah, unless you like turn over and then you just have to like readjust it so that one side of your head isn't laying on the beads, because there's like beads inside that are the weighted part. Anyway, you could all look up a Nod Pod, but the Nod Pod very, very much helps me sleep. And it was also so nice, side note, if you have like a headache, to have that like pressure on your eyes, it feels really good. So the Nod Pod, super, super helpful. I also take magnesium before bed. I've also been doing topical magnesium lotion. Y'all know I have like super headache prone and neck issues. And so I've been putting anywhere where I have like a lot of either tightness or soreness. Like sometimes my QL kind of like flares up and I get this just like feels like something in my low back is bothering me, or SI pain. And so I'll put the topical magnesium on usually my neck and traps, and then anywhere else that might just be like a focal point that's bothering me. And I find that really, really helps with sleep. It's like, I think they actually call it like a sleepy time magnesium lotion, and it helps with just kind of releasing the tension there and helping sleep. So magnesium lotion, I was going to say edible magnesium, oral magnesium, the Nod Pod, sound machine, but I use deep brown noise. I cannot do white noise. Deep brown noise is my thing. And if you listen to the differences, there's just like a big difference in frequency. The deep brown noise is much more like low. I don't know. Like white noise would keep me awake. Deep brown noise helps me sleep. So
It's like white fat versus brown fat. Brown fat's a little better for you. Brown noise.
very similar. Well, you could go on Spotify and just like I just stream Spotify every night. That's how I do my deep brown noise. But in those channels, there's like pink noise, red noise, green noise, but deep brown.
I'm picturing like there's an ad on Instagram with like a green booger that moves around, and it's like that noise. That's all I'm picturing right now.
What?
It's like
We've
a
got
vortex,
weird
but it just
Instagram
looks
ads.
like a green. But it's one of the sound. It's a sound something. It's probably
It's
the
a
green
sound
noise.
thing
Just
that
it
looks
looks
like
like
a green
looks
booger.
like a green booger just kind of floating around as it makes noise. That's all I'm picturing.
Interesting.
Right
I
now.
don't know what you're talking about. But anyway, yeah, those are my, I think that was 4, but those would be my main sleep things.
All right.
All right, on to the next one.
I keep
Sorry
forgetting
if
I'm
you
reading the
hear.
questions
Can you hear Wes breathing right
Yeah.
now?
For
a
sure.
little
He's
bit,
like-
but it sounds adorable. Keep it. Jen, she's a client of ours. She said, not a question. I was listening to your podcast yesterday about your birth story with Wes and your postpartum advice. I recently had a hysterectomy and I work with Coach Tom, and he did such an amazing job giving me a program that let me move while I was still recovering. I think I probably would have gone crazy if I didn't have something that I knew I could do and some daily movement. I do think that having daily movement and even just some light breath work made my recovery a lot easier.
I love that. I think
Yeah.
that's a great example of like no matter what injury, surgery, etc., that you're dealing with, there's typically always something that you can be doing. And it just it just comes down to the right intensity, the right type of programming. So shout out to Coach Tom for crushing it.
Way to go, Tom and Jen.
Yeah. Danielle asked, I have poor mobility in my right ankle from a grade 2, maybe grade 3 sprain, but can confirm I didn't break it, but would have been better if I did. That's so awful. Sometimes sprains are literally worse than breaks. But now when I do deadlifts, my left heel raises. Can I raise the bar with 10-pound plates under it to help still be correct form, or should I just slide a 2.5 under my heel? I do ankle mobility and hip mobility 3 times a week. We are making baby strides.
I did this almost this exact same thing, Danielle. I had a horrible basketball injury, pickup basketball, just playing outside with friends at the courts, and literally rolled my ankle sideways. It was purple for like 2 weeks. I never went in. And now I have this thing on the side of my ankle. Like, do you guys have that ball on the side, on the inside of your ankle? That one, like,
The
regular
bone?
ball.
The bone?
Yeah. I have 2.
Yes,
I
we all have
2
that
of
ball.
those. Do you know what I'm talking? You're aggravating me today. Why is that?
It's called your medial malleolus, if you'd like to know.
Okay, I gotcha.
The ball.
So I have two of those now, like right next to it. It kept getting bigger and bigger, and every time I went to see somebody, like I have no idea what that is. So the theory is I actually broke a chunk of bone off, and like it landed there and like grew as a bone spur, but like for a while, very limited mobility. So it takes time. I'm glad you're doing the things and seeing some baby progress throughout time. But I went through that exact same thing, Danielle. As far as like correcting it a little bit, yeah, if you need to reduce range of motion a tiny bit initially as you work through it, and like that's going to help as long as you can keep good form and keep the heels down and then slowly integrate back into full range of motion. I don't have a problem with that, but what do you guys think?
I'd be really curious about what type of shoes she was wearing, because this could be a good instance in which a weightlifting shoe with a raised non-compressible
like a squat
sole.
shoe.
Yeah, like a squat shoe could be really helpful instead of a flat shoe, because it kind of helps you get into that dorsiflexion of your ankle. So you might see better mobility with like squats and deadlifts. I know typically we would recommend like deadlifting in a flat shoe. But in a scenario like this, it could be helpful instead of having to like stick a weight under your shoe. But yeah, I would just think continued ankle mobility for sure. And possibly some in-person PT sessions so they could give you some, a little bit more specific guidance on what might help if you're just kind of winging it right now.
As far as like the short-term benefits of foam rolling, like we don't see a ton of lasting change with that. But as far as like the immediate after effect, like I could roll between sets, like when it was really bad, just to get that little extra range of motion. So that is a benefit you could utilize as you're working through this during the recovery phase, doing that active foam rolling between sets to just help out a little bit.
And even like during this time, if you wanted to switch to just like an RDL instead of a full deadlift, because those feel better, like that's also completely fine to not do deadlifts and work on that mobility and gain that back first, if deadlifts just feel really crappy, or if you can't just maintain that good form. So a few different options there, but
I feel like we could also probably tag in Robin and Tom for
Yeah.
more specific exercises or rehab strategies.
For sure.
I broke my ankle once playing lacrosse in college.
Oof.
You know that ball, Josh? But the one, the ball on the outside of the
On
ankle?
the outside of the ball, the other ball.
I chipped off the tip of that ball.
Ooh.
Maybe it landed on my ankle. That's why.
That's why you have a second one.
That's why I have a second. I have a third. 3 balls.
Well, I remember it was the week that I was finishing school. It was our finals week, and we had to like play a lacrosse game this was literally lacrosse class because I was a health and PE major.
I was like, I don't think you played like the sport lacrosse. I can't picture you
I was
being on the team.
Club. I was in ski club in college and intramural volleyball. Thank you.
Okay.
But no, this was lacrosse class, and so like our final was like we had to play a lacrosse game. And
cool.
that turf monster just grabbed my ankle, ripped me down. I felt a pop, like heard a crack. And I just like didn't do anything about it. I just walked on it because I had like 3 days left of school. And when I got home, I was like, I think I maybe need to like go get an x-ray. And they looked at the x-ray. They're like, no, everything looks normal. And then he like goes up really close to the x-ray and he's like, wait a minute. And he like comes over to my ankle and just like touches that ball. And I will forever call it that now. And he's like, oh, does this hurt? I'm like, Yes, significantly when you poke it. He's like, oh yeah, you actually chipped off this little piece of your ankle, right? And I'm like, great. And I was in an air cast and continued as usual. And I think it's fine ever since, but anyway. Okay. Another parent related question. Tali asked, what are some things that your parents did that you now do as a parent that you never thought you would do?
I read this when I was working out and I was trying to think of something. And I will say, like, when you talk about, I'm not going to go there. No,
Probably a good idea.
I'm gonna put the
I
brakes
don't
on.
even know what you're gonna say.
Your children? Did you not think you would beat your children, and now you beat them?
Now I beat them. No, that was not the way. It was a nope. Not even gonna go
Okay,
there.
don't touch it.
But what I will say is, it's not necessarily something. I'll backtrack. My parents did a great job. Like, I don't have any qualms, any things I would say, like, I wish they did that or they didn't do that. Like, they let me make my mistakes, let my siblings make their mistakes, learn from them. They were hard when they needed to be, and they let me fuck up and figure it out when, I don't know, moderately appropriate. I would say something that they didn't do that I would be like, I'm definitely going to be doing this. Like, I couldn't do it like that. They never went on vacation without us. Like, minus one time growing up. Like, we were on every single vacation. I'm like, nah, I want some private vacations. Just go hang out, the two of us. Let someone watch the kids. I don't know when that's gonna happen. I don't. It's not even as like. I get the occasional want. I get the. I know. It's just, but like, there's also. Yes, we want to get out, and then you think about the logistics and like, do I really want to be away from them for like a week? Like, maybe a long weekend or something like that, but it's like, it's going to take away from this trip wanting them to be with us if it's more than like 3, maybe 4 days max. Like, I'd rather they were just with us. My ideal scenario now is like, let's bring the helper with us and go do our own thing. Like, we pay for them to come so they can hang out and do their own things, but like with our kids, and then we can kind of come and go as we please.
You want to hear what Brant and I just booked?
Yeah.
So we're going to go to Florida. My parents are back and forth between Florida and New York. And so they have been asking all winter, like, when are you guys going to come down? When are you going to bring the girls? And so they came to us a few weeks ago and said, we have an idea. Hear us out. What if you guys all came down to Florida, stayed with us for like a day or two, but then left the girls with us, and you and Brant go take like the long weekend, just you two, while we have the girls, and you could either like leave and go on a cruise from Florida, or you could just go somewhere else in Florida, like go to the Keys or go to Del Rey or whatever. Leave the girls with us, and then like you'll take your 2 or 3 days on your own, but like be still nearby-ish. And then, on the tail end, you'll spend the one night with us or whatever on the way out, and then, you'll fly out or whatever. So that's what we did. That's what we booked. We have a trip at the end of the month. So we'll all fly in together. We'll stay at my parents for a night. And then Brant and I will go off on our own, like Friday through Sunday, or Friday through Monday, and then come back to my parents, stay with them for a day again, and then we'll all fly home together. So that felt like a nice, like, compromise of like all getting to go down, still getting to spend some time with all of us together and my parents. But then also Brant and I will get to have like 2 or 3 days of just husband-wife time and then reunite again. So
short cruise or somewhere in Florida?
No, we decided to just stay in Florida. Well, really, we were forced to stay in Florida. We were going to do a cruise, but then realized that neither of us have our passports. Like our passports are both expired, and it could take like 8 to 12 weeks to get your passport. So I was like, okay, maybe we'll just stay local. But that'll still be nice. So
that'll be really nice. I feel like with the third kid, I'm more like with Kai, I was more hesitant to leave. Like, I remember the first night we left him and you took me to somewhere for my birthday. Rhode Island.
The ocean house.
Yeah. And that was the first time we left him overnight. And I was like, that was hard. But like thinking about doing it now, like once he's good with the bottle, like, see ya. They're all together. That's the thing. Like, they have each other.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I feel like that makes it easier. And I mean, maybe not for our parents, but for them at least.
It's definitely easier leaving a group than like leaving one. And I was even when it was Kai and Cora, I'm like, Kai and Cora and the dogs, like they're a package deal. They all go together. They all stay together.
Yeah, now it's the 5 of them.
Now it's the 5 of them.
But to get back to Tali's question, I feel like I don't have an answer for this yet because our kids are still so young. Like, I feel like I probably would have more of an answer for this once they get a little bit older. But I was thinking the other day, this was something my grandparents did. And my siblings don't really remember it the way that I do. But my grandma used to just tell us stories. Like, if there was something that she wanted us to really like remember, or like was trying to teach us a lesson, or like a safety thing, or like whatever it was, like I have all these crazy stories from her that I have no idea if they're true or not, or if she just made them up. But she would, like, for example, like if I was hanging my arm out the window as a kid, she told me this like elaborate story, like a story, like something you would read out of a book. Like, she was a great storyteller about how so and so's son was sticking his arm out the window, and like this big truck came, and like his whole arm came, like just like that one's a little graphic, but like she would have these stories for like certain things that she would really
instead of
want
being
to
like,
get her
"Don't
point
do that."
across. Yeah. And I don't think that's something that I would say, like, I'm never going to do that. But the other day I did it with Kai, and I was like, I just pulled a grandmama because he was like playing with these little magnets. And here I am thinking about Cora and this baby and magnets. And you hear all the horror stories of like little kids eating these magnets. So I like told him this long, elaborate story about this little girl who left the magnets out, and her little brother got into them, and they had to take him to the hospital and get surgery, and like blah, blah, blah. And like, he didn't leave the magnets out. So like, I guess I'm just subconsciously.
It's kind of a good strategy.
I mean, it's great because then he remembers stories like that. Like,
Right.
he remembers stories that we've told him years ago. So I'm like, all right.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
What are you going to remember more? A story like that, or mom being like, hey, don't leave those out?
Don't do that. Yeah.
Right. Don't do that. I like
So,
that.
yeah.
Yeah. So you sound like that's something that you will likely do more of.
I am doing. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but yeah,
I like that.
The other side of it, I just don't think our kids are old enough yet for me. Like, when I think about like grounding my kids or like discipline, and like that's where my mind goes when I think about this question, but we're just not there yet.
I think about, to your point, Alessandra, like more like either teenage years.
Yeah.
Like there was one time when I was in high school and I was at a party and I lied about where I was going, and it was the first and last time I ever lied to my parents about where I was going when I was going out. And somehow parents just freaking know everything, or
They
at least
know.
my parents did at least. And my dad shows up at this freaking house, rips me out of this party, and I was so mad. I was like, everyone's talking about it. I'm going to be the talk of the school that my dad came in and pulled me out of this party. And I was so mad. And I was like, I remember thinking like I would never do that. And now I think like if my girls lied about where they were and I found out that they were at this house that they weren't supposed to be at, you're damn sure I'm going to rip you out of that fucking house.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yep.
I think that when we're kids, we think like, oh, I would never do that. And now I could see myself doing so much of the things that as a kid, I felt like, oh, I would never do that. But yeah, I agree that right now at this age of my girls, certainly I don't remember being, a 2-year-old, a 3-year-old. So I don't remember anything that they did then that like I'm definitely doing now that I didn't think I would do. But I would say looking back as an adult now, I agree with so much more of what my parents did than disagree with what they did.
Yep. I agree.
Next question. I started training, this is from Hannah K. I started training for a 7K, which is 4.37 miles this week, and race will be May 3rd. I started with week 4 of the 5K program because I can comfortably run for 3 minutes. I am also doing the MOVE program for strength. But I was wondering, should I do the 3 days of running and 3 days of strength, or 4 days of running and the 4th run be a quote long run, and then only do 2 days of the MOVE program? Thoughts? Thank you. Alessandra?
I think it's negligible. I don't think either or is going to make a huge difference in my opinion, just because you are more of that beginner runner. So I personally would continue following MOVE, like follow the program as written, like do three days of move, your 3 full body days, and do your 3 days of running. You might have one day that overlaps and you have to do both in the same day. Always make sure you have at least one rest day, if not 2 per week. But I would say follow the program over adding in an extra run, especially if you're still on the newer side to running. So I don't want you to overload that too much right off the bat. Eventually, maybe after this race, if you want to continue to bump up that distance, maybe you do that and you add in a 4th run per week. But I would say focus on the 3 runs right now.
What's the difference between her setting it up this way, Alessandra, versus doing like hybrid?
So hybrid is, what'd you put in there? Extend, yeah. So that's
10K.
the 10K distance. So this is more of that beginner distance. So that's really the only difference there. But yeah, she can move to that after her race for sure.
Gotcha. All right. Ashley says, what is the science slash your guys' thoughts on a refeed for 1 day a week towards the end of a cut? This was just added in for me. Background info, still feeling very good overall, performing well in and out of the gym. Cut is 12 weeks total. I'm going into the last 4 weeks of it, and this refeed day was just added. Calories are at 1677, 150 protein, 150 carb, 53 fat. Refeed day once a week at 150 protein, 225 carb, 55 fat, 1995 calories. My first thing that I'm noticing about this question is that you said this was just added in for me. And so that to me means that you're working with someone who added that in for you. And so I'm curious, what that coach, like what your coach's justification is for adding the refeed day, because, one, that's what you're paying them for, and you should know why they're like, if they're changing a protocol or adding something, you should know why. And there should be a evidence-based explanation for that. But so there might be missing context. Like I know you said, hey, like I'm feeling good, but there might be something that your coach was seeing in your biofeedback, maybe with fatigue levels or bowel movements or stress levels. There might be a reason that you're not seeing that maybe your coach objectively picked up on, that is the reason that they implemented the refeed. A refeed can be helpful. It's not always necessary. It depends on the client. I would see we're more likely to add them in when we do see biofeedback suffering. So that is kind of that's what I'd recommend going back to your coach to ask, like, why did we add this refeed? Was there something in my biofeedback that you were noticing? And ultimately the goal is that it helps with continued adherence, and keeps performance and recovery in a good place ultimately.
Yeah,
but I would follow up with your specific coach about why that was implemented.
There were 2 things you put in there that would be like probably the first 2 that I check on. It's, are we doing this for like curbing hunger? Like toward the end of this cut, is hunger been higher? Feeling off a little bit? Is performance starting to kind of plateau or even downgrade a little bit? But you said you're feeling good, performance is good. Could potentially be a situation where they want to see some fullness added back in. You know, if they want to just do a 1 day refeed, see what that fullness looks like after that refeed day, just by analyzing progress pictures. So definitely a lot of different ways they could take it for a lot of different reasons. But overall, it sounds like things are going really well. Only thing you didn't touch on that would be interesting to know is, what is the scale doing, and like what are you seeing aesthetically? Like, is the scale moving down? Are you noticing week over week? You are, or maybe not week over week, you're seeing the improvements in the progress pictures, but over a certain course of time, you're still seeing improvements in body composition through those progress pictures or whatever else you're doing to measure that. So some variables there that could be a factor, but definitely tough. Any kind of specific coaching without knowing the whole story, it's tough to comment on because there's a bunch of different reasons they could utilize that. So those are some general things we can kind of relay back to you, but it sounds like, at least 3/4 of those have kind of been covered. So probably falling.
Yeah, that also made me that also made me think, Josh, if the rate of loss is actually ahead of schedule or she's losing weight too quickly, like that could be another reason that that a refeed was added. Typically, there's better research on 2-day refeeds, like 2 consecutive days for a refeed instead of 1. But yeah, I would go back to your coach with their specific reasoning and follow-up questions about why they decided to implement that. Yeah. Next question. This is an anonymous question. I've been trying to conceive for just under a year and have been eating at maintenance since starting. I know that eating in a calorie deficit and TTC are conflicting goals due to the stress on your body, but I also know that I don't feel great in my body and could probably lose around 20 pounds. My question is, at what point in your trying to conceive journey do you stop putting your physical goals on hold and start to continue living your life as you are right now? Not to say that you stop being healthy or can't make progress at maintenance while trying to conceive, but in this case, I mean for fat loss specifically.
This is a good question.
A very good
really
question.
good question.
It
comes up a lot, I think. And we kind of we talked about this before we started recording, Joelle, but I think, you mentioned that you could probably lose around 20 pounds or so, and that's a pretty significant amount of weight to lose, 20 pounds. I would say if somebody was asking this question and they just wanted to be they're already a fairly lean individual and they want to be more lean or kind of just cut to a super low body fat percentage, then yeah, that's probably going to stress your body out a lot more. But on the flip side, if you are overweight, that being overweight could potentially be what is causing you to struggle with trying to conceive. So we want to think about the trying to conceive phase of your life as what's going to make you individually the most healthy, quote unquote, inside and out. And you want to feel good, of course, in your body, as you mentioned. But internally and like overall health perspective, like we want that to be in alignment. Like your menstrual cycle and just your ability to conceive and your fertility all rely on overall health. And I think a lot of people miss that point of this, is that TTC is essentially just focusing on the big rocks of our health. And sometimes for some people that may mean losing some body fat to improve your overall health levels. So that's
your
my
body
take.
is such an incredibly smart organism. Like in order to be fertile and like in a place where you can become pregnant, have kids, if you're a guy being fertile, you need to be at somewhat optimal health levels. Like if you're in rough shape, your body's like, no, you're not ready to have a kid. You're not ready to be taking care of somebody else, of something else. Like it's about you right now. So not to say that you're not in optimal health. Obviously we don't know much other than you said you could probably lose 20 pounds. But that's something to think about. If you're not at optimal health, like what are the things that you can do? That could be losing weight. It could be improving sleep. It could be focusing on stress management, all the big rocks that she just mentioned. But just to kind of throw that in there, your body's incredibly smart. If something's off, it'll kind of nudge you that way and let you know by not getting pregnant.
Yeah, I think it's a tricky balance for people because we have promoted this idea, not to anyone's like fault, because context matters always. And that's why it's hard to give blanket statements like you shouldn't be in a deficit if you're trying to conceive. Because for someone who, you mentioned wanting to lose 20 pounds, which is nothing, but it's not a significant amount of weight. But we hear that dieting is a stressor, but also extra body weight is a stressor. And so we have to kind of find that fine line of, the body not necessarily feeling like it's in this state of scarcity and that food is scarce, but that we're also as healthy as we possibly can be metabolically. So I don't think it's necessarily bad to be in a deficit depending on the context of the situation. And I also think about Alessandra, when you got pregnant with Cora and you were probably like one of your leanest.
I was just going to bring that up.
Right?
Yeah. So yeah, but when I got pregnant with Cora, I
you
was
were running more than ever.
At my leanest physique. I was
shape.
peak fitness, like cardiovascular wise, strength wise, all of the above. And I remember someone commented on something at that point and was like,
thinking of this exactly.
don't you think you're, I don't remember what she said exactly.
I remember
but
commenting
to
back
sum
to
it
her.
up, I remember you doing that also. She was like, just to sum up what she said, she was like, do you think your level of leanness is why you can't get pregnant? But she said it in a very blunt, rude way on one
And
of
I
my
think it was
posts.
also like post miscarriage, and it just felt really blamey
Yes.
of like maybe if you ate
That
more,
you're the
like maybe if you
problem.
weren't
Yeah.
so lean, you wouldn't be having miscarriages. And I was like, oh yeah, I'm sure if eating tacos was her problem, she would have figured that out by now. Like I could not help
But you know
myself.
what? It's funny though, because yes, I was at my leanest, but I still was not, I was still at a healthy level of
Yeah.
lean. And I think
For you.
I looked more lean too because of how much muscle I have on my body. Like,
Yeah.
I feel like a lot of people, I don't know what the word is, but they kind of see very muscular physiques and don't really understand. What am I trying to say here? They don't really.
The more muscle you have on your body, the
leaner you can
leaner you
appear.
look. Yeah.
Even if you have a decent level of body fat, is what I'm trying
Yeah.
to say. So anyway,
You
moral
can be
of
at a
the
healthy
story.
body weight, but have a lower body fat percentage because you have more muscle mass.
Yes, thank you, Josh, for
That was
coming
much
in
more
and-
eloquent. Good job.
Yeah. I still have
That's what I'm here for.
still recovering
Eloquency.
from pregnancy brain. No, but it's true, and I think that we swing the pendulum so far in both directions, as with everything in the health and fitness space, that sometimes it's really hard to know what the right move is, and that's why it really comes down to individuality here and what your life looks like, what your body is doing, how everything is going internally for you. It doesn't matter what anyone else is doing or saying. Like, if you are going to be healthier from losing that weight, then that's going to be the move for you. So,
You know, come to
Shameless
think
plug.
of
This
it,
is also why having a coach in your corner can be really
Yep.
helpful because A, this is confusing. B, context matters. And C, it is very, very hard to be objective about your own health, fitness, training, and nutrition, especially when there is this added emotional component of I'm trying to conceive, I'm not having success with it. What is my next step? I'm not saying that like if you work with a coach, you're magically going to get pregnant, but sometimes it's just really helpful to have that additional support person who can look at what you're doing objectively and provide guidance and clarity around next steps.
it gives you the data. Like the things we measure, there's so much data so we can quantify the areas of your health that's actually improving. I was just going to say, come to think of it with all this, the best I've felt in a decade was right before that super sperm that you're holding was conceived. So the magical sperm over there, that was years and
More than
years of
sperm
getting
now.
back to optimal health. Yeah.
yep. And look
He
at
has
him.
evolved.
He's
Full-grown tadpole.
jacked.
He's here to evolve.
Little jacked tadpole.
Not Wes having bigger delts than me at 9 years old. Fine.
Literally.
Absurd.
Literally. Okay, next question. Emily asked, what are your general recommendations for fat loss postpartum? I'm 12 weeks postpartum and currently focusing on getting 8 to 10K steps a day, strength training 4 times a week, and 75 minutes of cardio weekly. That sounds great.
That's
For
awesome.
for diet, I am reducing heavily processed food with a focus on increasing protein and veggies. I want to go through a fat loss phase in the future, but I am breastfeeding and my main priority is keeping up supply. For diet history, I haven't gone through a fat loss phase in 3 or 4 years. If I want to maintain supply, would you recommend waiting to cut when we introduce solids and baby is naturally weaning some, or is there a way to introduce fat loss and maintain supply? If the recommendation is to wait, are there any other habits not listed above that you would recommend to focus on to build a solid foundation for a future fat loss phase? First of all, you are doing fantastic, Emily.
You're doing
Well done.
all
Let me
the
just
right
say,
things.
You are already setting yourself up for a really successful dieting phase in the future. You are asking the right questions and you are doing the right things to still focus on your health overall. And I love that you're still focused on healthy habits and behaviors, even though you're not in a deficit. Because I think sometimes people think those are like mutually exclusive. Like if I want to focus on healthy habits, I need to be in a deficit. And it's like, nope, you could not be in a deficit and still walk, strength train, do your cardio, eat your fruits and veggies, get your protein up, focus on sleep and stress management, and so on.
And you might see progress by continuing doing these things. Like, so, but I would say continue on this trend. I don't know how long you've been doing all of these things. But I would personally would continue this, really focus on building your strength back up. See, obviously track your progress, not just scale wise, but take some progress photos, focus on increasing strength in the gym and kind of see how things pan out. And then if you really do need that official, like I need to hop in a deficit after, I would say maybe do this for another month or so, kind of give yourself some wiggle room here and then kind of assess, like, am I making any progress at all? Would I like to enter a fat loss phase? Am I sleeping enough to enter a fat loss phase? Do I feel good in all of those other areas to enter this right now? And if yes, then I think that's fine. But there really is no, in my opinion, like once you hit 12 weeks or 16 weeks or whatever it is, this is when it's okay to enter a fat loss phase postpartum. It's going to be completely different for everybody. Some people can enter that fat loss phase no problem and milk supply is totally fine. I've had other clients, even with the slightest deficit, notice a dip in supply. So it really does depend, unfortunately, and it's kind of something that you have to experiment a little bit with. But again, I think you're doing a lot of awesome things right now.
As far as that solid foundation for future fat loss, like one of the best things you can do that is just not even a compliment, but very in line with what you're doing now, is focus on getting stronger and potentially adding a little muscle at this maintenance phase. You have a little more muscle, it's going to make the fat loss even easier. I don't want to say easier, but you'll notice it more significantly as it happens. A lot of times people will lose fat and realize there is minimal muscle there to begin with, so they end up just being like this smaller version of a similar body type. So while you're in this kick-ass phase and you're dominating this, doing a great job, make muscle gain a priority. Don't have to necessarily go into, what was that, buddy? Don't have to necessarily go into like a full-on bulk, but if it's a slight a slight surplus, or just, you know, continuing at the higher end of that maintenance range and just making sure week over week you're getting stronger, that's one of the best things you can do for that fat loss foundation.
Yeah, the only follow-up question I would have, and Alessandra, I think you brought this up too, but how long has she been at these current habits? Because she mentioned she's 12 weeks postpartum and she's already ramped up strength training to 4 days a week, cardio to 75 minutes a week, 8 to 10,000 steps a day. My guess is she was cleared for exercise at 6 weeks and maybe started right then. So maybe you're 6 weeks into these habits. And you could be another 6 weeks into these habits and notice your body composition improving, even though you haven't really entered an intentional deficit. So I am team like keep calories as high as you can for as long as you can and don't necessarily bring them down unless you have to. There is no hard and fast rule. I don't typically, personally and professionally, I don't love to see someone enter a deficit before that 3 to 6 month mark postpartum. Closer to 3 months for some people, closer to 6 months for other people, depending on what those previous weeks have looked like, what we're currently doing, what other baseline habits or behaviors we need to reestablish or gradually reintroduce. But by 12 weeks, milk supply is typically pretty well established. And so that is a good point, I would say maybe in the next month or so, or the next 4 to 6 weeks, that is a good point where milk supply at this point should be pretty stable, that if you did enter into a small deficit, you likely would see a response. Whereas like those first few weeks, milk supply is kind of like all over the place. You're like oversupply, undersupply, I felt a dip, now I'm oversupply again. That likely is not happening anymore. So it's a safer time, so to speak, to potentially trial and error with a deficit. But like Alessandra said, I would start small because some people's bodies are just really hypersensitive to that deficit. But you can diet and breastfeed successfully.
Does that sound more soothing, or is Cal snoring more soothing?
Can you hear it, Joelle, or is it just on our end? Yeah, she can't even hear.
What, the baby?
Yeah.
I don't hear Cal.
No, not
Oh,
Cal.
so is that more
I hear
soothing than
little
Cal?
baby breaths. No, the little baby breath could definitely be more soothing for me. No offense, Cal. Okay, next question. My husband, this is an anonymous question. My husband just had a kidney stone removed and he is recovering. He's had them in the past. Are there dietary changes to prevent those? He's currently overweight, has been sedentary most of his life, goes through stages where he runs for 6 months, then stops. He got his blood work done, has high A1C, high says LDL cholesterol. Doctor wants to put him on meds, but he says he's determined to do it through diet and exercise, which I'm in full support of. I've been trying to get him to be more active and change his diet. He goes out to lunch a lot with friends, and he owns his own business and has the flexibility to do that. I'm in charge of dinner, so that's easy to manage, but any recommendations on what type of activity or foods to help best with that? And also recommendations for how to support him through this. I don't want to nag him, but we have a son and I want so badly for him to be able to run around with him. I've never had to deal with anything like this, as I was a college athlete and have lifted weights most of my life and have eaten very well. Appreciate any recommendations.
Send him our podcast.
Let
him listen.
I do have a few talking points here, and I definitely understand that it could be a tricky balance. It sounds like you're trying to be a really supportive wife, and you don't want to be nagging him. I know in the podcast we've talked before about like leading by example, but I know you want some specifics here. So I think that there are some dietary changes and training recommendations that we could cover. I do want to start out by saying that all of what I'm about to say, pick and choose a place to start from those, because in a weird way, he has the potential to make a lot of progress because he's actually not doing a lot right now. Like, because he's a sedentary individual who's not really exercising and not really paying attention to what he's eating, he has the potential to really make some significant health improvements just by like adding in walking and like adding in one more vegetable than he's currently eating. So
and
when
if he
you
wants the motivation, that stat episode, again, these basic things make such a big difference for everything you're talking about. So
yeah. So there are a lot of changes that can be made from a dietary standpoint. Since he has a history of kidney stones plus the high A1C and LDL, I would say from a dietary standpoint, first of all, hydration is going to be huge for kidney stones. So aiming for at least like 3 liters of water per day could be a good starting point. Adding some citrus like lemon, lime to water as citrate can help kind of with kidney stones. Reducing, calories that he's potentially getting from sugar sweetened beverages like sodas, sweet teas, juices. They can potentially increase stone risk or worsen blood sugar control. So even like the swap from sweetened beverages to diet beverages can potentially be helpful. When it comes to balanced meals and A1C and cholesterol, a huge thing here is going to be protein and fiber. So when we talk about fiber, having more whole grains, legumes, veggies, fruits, when it comes to lean protein, chicken, fish, especially fatty fish for salmon can be really, fish like salmon can be really helpful for heart health. Lean beef, eggs, and there's obviously other plant-based proteins too, like tofu or lentils. Healthy fats that he could be including, avocados, olive oil, nuts, limiting processed foods. I know you mentioned trying to limit some of that for him. And dairy in moderation is another thing to consider. If his stones were calcium oxalate, then moderate dairy intake can be beneficial since calcium binds to oxalates in the gut and can help prevent stone formation. You also mentioned that he eats out a lot, so potentially smarter lunch choices when he is eating out, which if he doesn't know what that looks like, then just saying like, make better choices at lunch can be a little bit difficult. But some simple swaps that he could think about, choosing grilled over fried, right? If, maybe he wants to get a salad and it comes with fried chicken on top or breaded chicken on top, can we shoot for the grilled chicken option instead? Can we opt for, salads with an added protein source? Can we ask for it to be a vinaigrette dressing instead of a creamy dressing? Typically, we can save a lot of calories there. Can we choose the lean protein and veggie option instead of, the burrito or sandwich option? So I do think that there are lots of changes that can be made if we are eating out. There are always protein options. There are always vegetable options. There are always salad options, for instance, when we do go out to eat. But my biggest piece of advice for someone who is new and kind of overwhelmed with where do I start is focus on adding. Because the second we think, okay, if I'm gonna fix this with diet and exercise, what are all the things I need to remove? Do I have to remove cookies? Do I have to remove this? Do I have to remove all of my favorite things? focus on adding. Where can we add movement? Where can we add protein? Where can we add color? And I like to gamify color because for someone who does not regularly eat fruits and vegetables, and now telling them to eat 5 servings of fruits and vegetables per day can sound really daunting and overwhelming. So how many colors can we shoot for? Can we have blueberries with our breakfast and we've already gotten in 1 color for the day, and we had a salad with lunch and it had little carrots in it and it had little tomatoes in it and it had spinach in it. Cool. We just had 3 colors for lunch. How many, gamify it. How many colors did you have today, honey? We tell our clients to shoot for like 3 to 5 colors per day. And so that can be a great way to say, ultimately what we're doing there is adding fiber via fruits and vegetables. So I think ultimately hydration is going to be key. Balancing meals for A1C and cholesterol with more fiber, more protein, more healthy fats. I can't remember if I touched on that, but avocados, olive oil, nuts can all be great there. Smarter lunch choices when eating out. Anything else you guys would add there from a nutrition standpoint before covering training exercise standpoint?
No, I would say just to kind of ease into that one, one of the easiest things he can do to make a massive impact. He's got time. He works from home. He said he goes out to lunch all the time. Take a walk at lunchtime. Maybe it's 10 minutes. Maybe he works up to 15, 20, 30, like how aggressive he wants to be, whatever. Start with 10. One more simple thing he could do if he's not fully into the gym routine at this moment, but something that's had a huge statistical impact that's been shown is 10 bodyweight squats after each meal. And between that and a walk after each meal, the 10 bodyweight squats will take you 30 seconds and it does more than with your blood sugars than that 10, 15, 20-minute walk does. Both those in combination are going to be great. But that's been even more impactful than something like metformin we talked about a couple episodes ago. 10 body weight squats, 30 seconds after each meal. So he can sit down into a chair and stand back up. Do that 10 times when he's done eating. It's more impactful than the drug they prescribe in metformin. So one thing to just kind of keep in mind with the A1C, I believe it's a 3-month rolling average. Am I correct on that?
Yeah, A1C is like a 3-month average of your blood sugar.
So it's something that's going to adapt over time. So if you're doing a CGM, continuous glucose monitor, you have a couple good days, that's not necessarily impacting your A1C unless you can maintain those protocols for the longer term. So the key there is making sure the things that he is adding in, like Joel talked about, adding things in, are things that he can maintain. Sustainable. Yeah. That's why we talk about something as minute as 10 squats after each meal. So if he's doing that 3 times a day, it's 30 squats, takes up 90 seconds of his day. If he is serious about doing this on his own, about not getting onto medication, you start there and you hold yourself accountable to that one thing. And it's going to make a difference, but then you keep stacking on top of that. You take that 15, 20, 30-minute walk at lunchtime at a certain point, but slowly add these things in. And if he's consistent with it, he can really turn things around.
The other cool thing about this is that he has some baseline labs now. So whatever he does implement, he could get labs redrawn in 3 to 6 months and tangibly know what's working outside of just his weight. But because I do think he'll probably see changes in his weight, but it will be very cool to be able to compare blood work in a few months after what he does implement. Yeah. And then just from a exercise or training standpoint, I think this is a place where a lot of people go wrong too. They're like, okay, I'm going to fix this. I'm going to start training every single day, 2 hours a day. And it's like, whoa, hold up. That, to Josh's point, is not going to be super sustainable. Can we just start with strength training twice a week? Like even twice a week, 2 to 3 times a week is going to help lower A1C, help improve insulin sensitivity. It's going to support weight loss. It's going to reduce LDL cholesterol. And it doesn't have to be in a gym. It could be body weight movements or resistance bands at home. Or maybe you start out with a few sets of dumbbells at home and maybe eventually you go to a gym, or maybe you don't. Walking.
10, 15 minutes.
Yeah.
Just get started.
Yep. We also have an app that can help you with exercise programming if you need help with that.
We also have something else that's going to be right up this alley that will probably come out this week.
Yeah.
I'm talking about something different. This week we're going to have some tools.
Hint, hint. Wink, wink. Project B.
No, it's not. I'm not talking about project. This week I'm saying.
Oh, what do you? This week? What's this week?
What I've been grinding through for.
Oh yeah. That. Touche. Also, one-on-one coaching. Shameless plug. Could also be really helpful because he might need the accountability. And to your point about, I don't want to be the naggy wife, we'll be the naggy coach, let the coaches do the nagging, and help hold him accountable, because that could be challenging, in a marriage. So, another thing I wanted to add is just walking, low impact cardio. Josh, you nailed it with like a post meal walk, even 10 to 15 minutes, can really help to control blood sugar and aid with digestion. You could start with a step goal and work your way up. I know people love to say, 10,000 steps is like golden, but if you're at like 2,000 steps right now, can we get it up to 4? Can we get it up to 6? And top place that we would hope to get it is like a minimum of 7,500, because that's really where we see huge, significant reductions in health risk or all-cause mortality risk. So walking is a really, really great place to start, and it's got a really low barrier to entry.
I'm going to find that number, the episode number.
Oh, for the walking?
Carry on. Yeah, carry on.
Yeah. And then just, the other things that come to mind about supporting him without nagging is that, obviously you want to come from a place of love, but he has to feel ownership of this, like he has to feel ownership and responsibility of, I want to do this. And if I want to do this without meds, I need to do it the right way, and I need it to be sustainable. And hopefully you'll be able to kind of like frame it as teamwork instead of like, you should be doing this. Like, let's do this together. I want to walk after dinner. Do you want to join me? Here's what I want to make for dinner. I want to make sure we have a veggie tonight. Do you want to pick the veggie tonight? I was going to make Brussels sprouts, but would you prefer a different vegetable? So just really making it so that it's something you can do together. Maybe you could even make it fun about cooking new meals together, like go into a cooking class together or planning some sort of outing together. I think we run into issues when we start trying to like micromanage and try to take control of everything. So yeah, work as a team, frame it as teamwork, make it fun where you can, and celebrate the progress where you can, like acknowledge when he does choose the healthier option, or if he's excited that he did that, just like celebrate that with him, and continue to lead by example. Those would be my top tips.
Episode 26, the top predictors of health. If he needs some motivation, this little thing isn't going to do that much. There are some crazy numbers to these little things, and we'll give you a bunch of little things and a bunch of crazy numbers in that episode. 26, the Fitness League, the top predictors of health, unlocking the true power of the L5 method.
One last side note that I just thought of, hopefully, and this just might be something that's helpful, would he be open to tracking progress with non-scale victories, like better energy or his clothes fitting better? I know I said, like schedule blood work again in 3 to 6 months, because that can kind of be a tangible goal. But sometimes when we are able to track those non-scale victories, it can just kind of help us to stay motivated on a health journey outside of just scale weight. Cool. All right. I think we have about 2 questions left. Crystal asked, I have reached a point that I cannot lift more than a few heavy reps without dropping the bar due to grip strength and sweaty palms. I am so frustrated. I'm already doing all the grip strength exercises, but I need tips/product suggestions to help me in the meantime.
Lifting straps.
Or liquid chalk. I remember.
That's for sweaty palms, but in the meantime, if the limiting factor in your lift is your grip strength, use the lifting straps, and then train as you're doing, train grip strength on its own.
And someone else brought up gloves. I personally wouldn't recommend lifting gloves. I'm not a huge fan of lifting gloves. It creates a barrier, but it also can, I don't know, in my opinion, it can also, I don't want to say weaken your grip strength, but it just, I don't know. They were limiting for me. Like I used them way back in the day, like when I started doing my bodybuilding bikini competitions, and it does definitely limit you to an extent too. So I'm not a huge fan of the gloves per se, but lifting straps. Yeah. And then if you really struggle with like the sweaty hands, liquid chalk is amazing. If you have like deadlift day, or if you're doing lunges with dumbbells, that can be just enough of a barrier to make your hands not sweaty.
I feel like if I was trying to deadlift or something, gloves would worsen my grip.
That's what I mean. Like it almost like
starts sliding on your hand.
yeah.
Yeah. Like not having the tactile cue of like the knurling on your hands or something like that, I think would make it more challenging. But I agree that wrist wraps would be really helpful. But to definitely continue working on those grip strength exercises, carries, because you want the wrist wraps to support you, but you don't want them to
be the crutch.
Yeah, like you don't want to rely on them as a sole tactic. So wrist wraps and continued grip strength work. And I believe the last question, how to have faith that everything, Mary asked this, how to have faith that everything will turn out okay after a miscarriage. I'm experiencing secondary infertility. We have a 3-year-old and 18-month-old, easy, uncomplicated conception and pregnancies. I know that stressing and getting in my head about it will not help. I'm doing my best to focus on doing the things I love, staying healthy, practicing gratitude, but it is hard to stay patient through the process of trying to conceive again. Any tips you have on enjoying life and staying present while also trying to conceive would be greatly appreciated.
Relatable. So first and foremost, I'm not going to be the person that says everything will work out as it should be and it will be fine, because nobody knows how it's going to work out. However, with that said, I can relate to the whole stressing thing, because the more you stress, it feels like the more frustrating it becomes. I don't know how long you've been trying to conceive or like what the context is here. But something that really helped me was just sort of like not hyper focusing on it. Like, yeah, we would still try every month, but at the end of the day, I set some fitness goals. I started running again. I started doing things for me again. And I think that was probably the most helpful thing, along with seeing a maternal mental health therapist. It got to the point for me where it was definitely impacting my mental health, and seeing someone and being able to talk to someone who specialized in that was a game changer. But I would say those two things kind of just helped me not overly stress about it and not hyper focus on it, because you get to the point where it's literally all you think about all day long, and like you're researching and Googling and like doing all of the things to see what else you could do to make it happen. But also, like, something one of my midwives told me at the time was like, we're really lucky when things pan out the way that we want them to and we get pregnant on that first month. Like, the chances of that happening are so slim. Like, when you think about all of the things that have to connect and happen for you to have this growing baby in your body. So it's also not abnormal for it to take a few more months. And I know you said you got pregnant the first go around with your first two. So it might just be something that takes a little bit longer this time. And even if that's not the plan, then that's also okay. So that's my advice, is to set some goals for yourself, do some things for you, seek out therapy if you can, and if you feel like you need to and need that outlet, and ultimately just don't let that put your entire life on pause.
Were there any books, Alessandra, that helped you during that time?
Not during the infertility part, but once I got pregnant.
After miscarriage.
Yes, it was like pregnancy after loss or something. That one was sort of helpful. It was like a hybrid journal / book. I didn't really read any during the trying to conceive time that I was like, this was great. Because I think it's just so therapy. It's so different for everybody. Right? Yeah, I was going to therapy, so it was like, that's where I was getting my outlet mentally. But even something like a gratitude journal might be helpful if you're not doing that right now. I know you said you're practicing gratitude. I don't know to what extent, but just focus on all of the things that make you your best self. And in my opinion, that was really helpful for me, like mentally, physically, also on top of it. And it kind of just, when we did conceive, it was almost like, oh, like I was so busy doing all these other things that here we are. And then there's a whole nother level of stress, because for me it was like we were getting pregnant and then we were losing it. But at the end of the day, don't let it completely take over every aspect of your health and your life, which I know is easier said than done.
Yeah. And I'm sorry you're experiencing that.
I know. It really does stink. It's the worst.
Sending good vibes your way. We do have one from last week.
Oh.
It came in after
I don't even know where
we
that
recorded. I got you.
question. Do you
I'm
have
gonna
it,
take
Josh?
over
I don't have it.
I do. Yep. So spicy and controversial one for you guys. Wondering what vaccine schedules you went with for your littles. First time new mom here, and I value your opinions. I've done my own extensive research, but just curious of your opinions with so much going on in today's world. I don't know if we're going to go further than this, but I will say there have been appointments where they want to do like 5 vaccines at a time. And we're like, okay, well, we're not going to do 5. We'll do a couple and then we'll come back in a month or whatever it is. So as far as the actual timing, that's where we have given some pushback. We haven't rejected anything aside from the new one that our kids will never be getting and the eye drops right after birth, right?
Yeah.
Right.
I forget what they're called, but
The antibiotic eye drops for gonorrhea.
yeah.
Kid doesn't have gonorrhea, so don't need the eye drops.
I
And
don't
mom
have
gets-
gonorrhea.
And I don't know if I would imagine you had this too, but you get like pregnancy, you got drug tested multiple times. Like, not drug tested, STD tested. Well, anyway, STD tested. And most of the time, from those tests, if you had gonorrhea.
Yeah, I would say it's more of
we-
a timing thing for us, though.
Yeah, that's my take mostly overall as well. Like there have been times where we're scheduled for like 3 shots in a day, and I'm like, can you pick one? And we'll come back, like even if we got to come back in a month, like in between 3 or 6 month appointments, to come back and get the other one, I'm fine with doing that. If we were to have some sort of adverse reaction or they are going to have this big immune response, I'd rather know like where it's coming from. So if there is an allergy in something or there's an adverse response in something, we know where that's coming from. And the way I think of it is like our pediatrician wouldn't necessarily advise us to like, when you introduce solids, it's like, hey, introduce one food at a time, wait like 3 days before you're to introduce potentially another food. So that's kind of the like approach that I would take. So we have delayed some, but as far as I know, we have still followed anything that is not a optional. We don't typically do like an optional one, like a flu, COVID, RSV. We haven't done those. But anything that's like measles or Hep B or whatever, we've done all those.
Mm-hmm.
And you did RSV while you were pregnant.
I got the RSV shot this time during pregnancy only because Cora had RSV at 4 months old, and it was kind of scary to go through with a tiny baby having it. So I figured if I can get it and pass the antibodies down to him while he's still inside of me, I'd rather do that than give it to him. So we did that, but yeah, we're not doing the COVID. We didn't even do flu this year. So that's our take. And I know everyone's going to have their own opinion on it, and that's fine. Yep. And you ultimately need to do what's best for you and your family. And there's no judgment either way from us.
For sure.
Yep. It's, I find vaccines to be it is a controversial topic. And it's one of those things where it's hard to be like, do your own research, because like A, people don't know how to do research, and B, people doing research is like following someone on Instagram.
Instagram is not research.
Like following someone who's like anti-vaccine on Instagram is like not really doing your own research.
And listen,
it's not reading 10 PubMed studies.
Right.
But listen, I do understand like people when they are trying to seek out things, they turn to the internet. Like that's just how people do things these days. Who looks like the authority on this thing? It feels like the person can be the authority and give you good advice, and maybe they are coming from a good place, but ultimately, do you trust them with your kid's life? I don't know.
I have not personally read it, but I have heard of the book, The Vaccine Friendly Plan. And I know that is a book that I have had some friends read, and they follow that. And it's supposed to be like a safe and effective approach to immunity and health. But I am not advocating for it. I have never read it. I just know that is like a book on the topic. If someone wants to look into that further, that's what I've heard of, the vaccine friendly plan. But I really just defaulted to my pediatrician. Like I remember being really scared about vaccines when Sloan was first born and feeling like this is an area that I don't know how hard I should be advocating for or against. And I had a really honest conversation with him. Like, I'd love to know your honest thoughts on like if there's anything in the vaccine schedule that like you don't really think is necessary, or if you don't really see these issues anymore that you don't think she should necessarily have. I had a lot of questions about the Hep B vaccine. Typically they do that like right when the baby is born, and then I think the next dose maybe a month later, like at a month old. And I could not see, like, why are we doing Hep B the second the baby comes out, which again is foodborne or blood or sexually transmitted, which the baby is having none of. So I had a lot of questions about that. So I would say, ultimately talk to your pediatrician, like talk to your child's provider, and physician. And you also don't have to stick with that with that physician if you don't like what they have to say. But I love our pediatrician.
But good luck finding another one.
Yeah.
that too. Look, there are some who take a little bit more of like a holistic approach or a less, vaccine strict approach. We, as of right now, like our kids are going to go to public schools, and like they wouldn't be able to go to public schools if they don't have vaccines. So that's at least how it is in New York. So I don't know if that will change at all in the future, but with all of these measles outbreaks, I actually called our pediatrician the other day to say, because it was like spreading a lot in Texas, and I was flying to Texas for the weekend, and I called our pediatrician's office the other day to say, can you just confirm with me if both of my girls got their MMR vaccines? Because I don't know, I'm flying to Texas, and like I know it's a really slim chance that I bring the measles home with me, but like, can you just confirm both girls got this? And they were like, yes. Okay, that's a little bit of peace of mind. So yeah, I know it's controversial. You don't have to agree with us, but this is just how we be doing things. Yeah. And you always here's your reminder that you always reserve the right to change your mind about something when presented with new information. So do with that as you will.
Amen. All right, guys, we're going to wrap it up here. I know that was a little longer for you. Where can they find you?
I'm at Alessandra Skutnik.
At Joelle Samantha.
At Josh Skutnik.
Everything you need is linked in the show notes.